morning, good evening, or good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to W.O.R.K.S. And this is your forever young host, Kim, speaking from Bradlett in Hertfordshire in the UK. Now, yesterday I spoke about your activity levels and how activity is very important in terms of getting the blood pumping around your body and making sure that your cells are receiving all of the nutrition they need to, which led me nicely into today's topic, which is going to be all about nutrition. For those of you that have been listening, you'll know that these are a series of shows I'm doing with regards to my new book, which is going to be Forever Young, the Advanced Guide to Anti-Aging. And this is a process I'm going through to create the book. So I hope you've been listening, and if you have, then welcome. If you haven't, then you may enjoy listening into other shows that were previously recorded, and you are welcome too. So, nutrition. Well, everybody says beauty's only skin deep, but I think we all know that's not true, because actually our outer skin is a representation of what's going on inside of our body. So if we want lovely looking skin, it's no good only putting even the most expensive products in the world onto the outside of your skin if what you're putting into your body is junk. So in terms of foods, what's good and what's bad? Well, since the 1980s, everybody's been down on fat. And I think recently people have started to talk about how actually fat isn't the big baddie that they thought it was, or that they said it was. I'm not suggesting that anybody goes out and eats buckets full of fatty foods. I'm not suggesting that we munch on chips, because actually what we're talking about in terms of fats that are healthy for your skin are things that are high in omega-3, omega-9, some of those essential fatty acids. And there's a reason they're called essential fatty acids. Essential fatty acids are not produced within our bodies. We can only get them from our foods, and they're vital for our health. If we don't have them, things don't work very well at all. And one of their main jobs, if you like, is to keep the balance, the lipid balance in our outer surface of our skin at the right level. If you don't have the right balance between fat and water in that layer, which sometimes gets called the acid mantle or sometimes called the lipid barrier, then it won't do as good job of protecting our skin as it's intended to. And it will allow microbes and pollution and other nasty things that we don't want to get into our skin through. So we want to keep that really lovely and healthy, that barrier. And in order to do that, two things we really need to get to our skin are water, which is number one. Everybody knows you're supposed to drink good quantities of water, approximately 2 litres a day, or about 20 ounces, something like that. It works out as 6 to 8 glasses of water a day. But on top of that, we need to have those fats, and the best kinds of fats are ones from kind of things like avocados, olive oil, the kinds of fats you get in nuts and seeds. They're really, really healthy for our skin, and you can get lots of beautiful nutrition from those. If you happen to eat meat, then you can eat fish oils as well. They're good for your skin. But the other job those fats all do, as well as keeping that acid mantle, that barrier, in really good condition, they're also very antioxidant. And you may recall, as I've been talking, about the um, free radicals that build up in our bodies, which are created not only by the oxygen in our bodies, which we use just to live, but also from attack from outside, from sunlight, and also from pollution, and also from nasty things that we may do to ourselves, such as smoking, or from drugs, things like that, that we may not have a choice about, or may have a choice about, but in any case, they could be creating these free radicals in our bodies. The free radicals, if you recall, come in and they like to gobble up some of the charged particles from our cells, which makes our cells unhealthy and can attack the DNA inside of our cells. So what we need to do to counterbalance that is to have beautiful antioxidant foods which come along. They grab hold of the free radicals, stop them attacking our cells by joining with them and making them safe. So omega-3s are really excellent antioxidants, and because of the protection to the barrier and the way they work with the free radicals, they're very good at reducing a lot of that redness that people can suffer from on their skins, and conditions such as rosacea, and also dry skin conditions such as eczema, psoriasis, things like that, all benefit heavily from having enough of the really healthy good fats in our diet. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but people that have been on very, very low fat diets, maybe over a period of time, can have quite kind of dull looking skin, where it just doesn't look as fresh and as dewy as we might wish it to. And this can be a result of the lack of fat in their diet, because it's just unbalanced things, and the skin cells are not coming away from the surface and leaving that lovely healthy layer behind, or just that there's just not enough oil in the skin, so it's becoming quite dehydrated, can become flaky, and also can even add to the fine lines and wrinkles and signs of premature aging. So fats, good, providing we don't eat too many of them, of course, and providing we choose ones with high levels of omega-3 and omega-6. So next on our list of foods that I want to talk about are sugars. Oh, sugar. Now, this one is a baddie. Sometime in the 60s, people knew that sugar was bad for them, and they knew that it made people fat. So there was always a campaign to cut down on sugar. And sometime during the 80s, this switched over to fat. But actually, evidence does show that sugar actually does contribute to weight gain. But actually, what it does to your skin might be even more worrying to you than what it does in terms of weight gain. What sugar does to your skin is it causes a process called glycation or glycosylation. Both words are correct. And this is a process where the skin, the sugar comes into the skin cells and it joins with our collagen and elastin fibers. And when it does, it creates kind of sticky bonds that stick together the collagen and the elastin into kind of bundles and tight kind of knit, sort of bonded lumps instead of nice, loose, stretchy areas. So what should happen in your skin is that it should be able to stretch and go back into place a bit like a balloon does. Now, if you can imagine, when you get a balloon, It's very, very tight when you get it, and it's very elastic. And that's how our skin is when we're born and when we're young children. And sometime in our 30s, probably, maybe a little bit earlier than that if we've not treated our skin very well, you have to imagine that we've started blowing up that balloon sometime when we're born and releasing the air out of it. And for the first 20 years, it's really, really good at going back to its original shape. But sometime in our late 20s, early 30s, when we blow it up, it stretches a little bit too far and doesn't go back to its original shape as well as it used to. And the more often we blow it up, the less well that balloon goes back into its original shape. Now, obviously with the balloon, it doesn't have a healing process. And so with us, we do have a healing process. So this process of it stretching and not going back as well takes a lot longer because of the good healing process. But as our healing process begins to slow down, as it does in our 30s, and not be as effective, then this stretching starts to happen. But worse than that, if you can imagine that instead of that balloon being able to stretch nice and effectively, the glycosylation causes little sticky bits in the balloon. So if you can imagine that there are tight parts in the balloon that won't blow up anymore. So it causes it to just stay where it is. And because it won't stretch so easily, if we do finally stretch it, it doesn't go back as effectively. So this causes fine lines and wrinkles. It can cause them by tightening the area or by it becoming loose and just never going properly back. So it dips and wrinkles. So glycosylation is something very worth avoiding. And the way to avoid glycosylation is to never have our sugar levels, our blood sugar levels out of whack. We need them to stay nice and level. The best way to do that is not to eat excessive sugar. So some sugar, we need it, it's important, it's what we run on. Our blood sugar goes into our energy. It's what helps us to keep running around, and it's vital for our brains. If anybody ever goes on a very, very low sugar diet, they soon find that they become kind of cloudy and they can't think straight. So I would never suggest that you cut out sugar entirely, but definitely keep it within good levels, because you want your body to be able to respond to it and keep your blood sugar at a nice even level, a nice even keel. Next on our list, I'm going to talk about carbs. Now, carbs, obviously, we all know about carb loading. We know you need carbs to keep you running around. And the reason I just said the sugar does that is because actually what happens is that the sugar goes almost directly into blood. We only have to break it down from probably, if we've just eaten a piece of cake, it's got sucrose in it, which is two sugars or glucose molecules kind of bonded together, and all our body has to do is break those apart. So that goes into our blood very, very quickly. Now, what happens if we eat a potato is that it's got very long chains of carbohydrates in it. And the carbohydrates are actually lots and lots of sugars all joined together. So our body has to break those all apart. And depending partly on how foods are cooked and partly on the kinds of foods they are, our body is able to break them down more or less quickly. Now, if it's something that our body can break down very quickly into individual little sugars and it pours into our bloodstream, then our blood sugar can go up and down and get out of whack again, the same as it can with just the plain sugar. And potatoes are a good example of this, particularly if they're mashed. We break them down much more easily. On the other hand, some foods, like sweet potatoes, don't break down quite as easily. Our body can't break those bonds apart quite so quickly. So the sugars are released more slowly into our bloodstream. And things like green leafy vegetables, although they have carbohydrates in, they will never break down as quickly as if we stirred some some sucrose into some water, as we do when we have sugar in a cup of tea, and have it straight like that, because then that's broken down very quickly. So the green leafy vegetables keep our blood sugar a much more even keel. And this is called the glycemic index. So if you want to eat foods that keep your body at a nice even level, which is very important to do with a number of issues that people can have, health issues. So for instance, people with diabetes, very important for them to keep their blood sugar levels even. But also people that suffer from polycystic ovary syndrome really benefit from keeping those blood sugars at a good level, and keeping them even. And actually, you could just memorize everything that's a really, really good low level of glycemic index, but some things confuse you. For instance, carrots come quite high on the list because they've got quite high levels of sugar, but we do break them down a bit more slowly than some other foods. But if you want to eat something that comes quite high on that list, a way to balance that is to eat it with something fatty. So somebody, if they ate carrot sticks dipped into hummus, because of the oil in the hummus, would actually break down that meal more slowly than they would just the carrot sticks if they ate them on their own. So if you want to balance something like the glycemic index of a banana, you could eat it with peanut butter. So that's a good way of keeping your blood sugar levels nice and even. And with the carbs, again, you don't want to be excessive amount of carbs. I think, when I remember in the 80s, early 80s, people said eat low calorie diets, and that meant that we tended to avoid eating things like large amounts of potato, large amounts of pasta. And when people started cutting out the fats instead, because the calories in fats are much higher, actually it meant you could eat more carbs compared to the amount of fat you ate. So it meant that when people started taking the fats out of foods, people started eating more carbohydrates. And actually, this is not a brilliant thing. We only need so many carbohydrates. Our bodies need about, for women, I think it's about 2,200 for the average woman, to keep their body level, or it might even be less than that, might be for gentlemen. So basically, we do not need as many carbs as most of us eat in order to live. And guess what happens to all the excess calories from those carbohydrates that we don't eat? Our body says, oh, do you know what? We might need them in the winter when we run into a famine because there's not a lot of food around. So our body stores them as fat, which would be fine if there was going to be a famine in the winter when it was cold and there wasn't much food around. But since we have supermarkets now, we carry on eating the same amount of food all year. And at the end of the year, the net result is that we've put on weight. So don't eat too many carbs either, because they will contribute A to fat and B to the glycosylation. Next, there's proteins. Now, everybody's always worried about proteins in people's diets. And I know because I am suspected of not eating enough proteins because I'm a vegan. People say, oh, where do you get your protein from? Well, the easy answer is protein is what makes food. everything is made out of protein. All of our fruits and vegetables and things are all made of protein. And so the chances of you being deficient in protein are very remote in our society. There may be a few societies in the world where you could go a bit low on protein, but almost everywhere in the first world, even the second world, it's very unlikely that people are ever going to have a protein deficiency. Other kinds of deficiencies are much more likely. And actually, in our society, we tend to eat plenty of protein. Things like burgers and stuff like that are in huge abundance. But what we tend to lack in our diet actually are the fruits and vegetables which provide all of the micronutrients which our bodies really need. And these are things that we can be deficient in. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about next. Now, I could talk about every vitamin and mineral out there because obviously they're all good for our health, but actually, because I'm talking specifically about anti-aging now, I'm going to just talk about the ones that are specifically important to us in terms of aging. So first of all, I'm going to talk about vitamin A. Now, most people will have heard of vitamin A and say, oh, carrots. And you're quite right. Carrots contain beta carotene, lots and lots of other lovely red fruits and vegetables, such as mangoes, sweet potatoes, butternut squashes, all contain high levels of beta carotene. And beta carotene is very healthy for us. It helps us to keep our eyesight in good condition and things like that. But in terms of skin health, what we actually need is retinol. And this is where people say, oh, you can only get retinol from animal products. But the fact is, actually, retinol is made in our bodies by converting it from beta carotene. So actually, to get a nice level of retinol in our bodies, all we have to eat are a plentiful supply of those nice red and orangey coloured fruits and vegetables on a daily basis, and our body will easily supply enough retinol for us. Now, the important thing for retinol is that it is anti-aging. It supports our skin and our skin cell turnover. And I've lost my note here. So what it's really, really good for is supporting our collagen. And it's the collagen, if you'll recall, that creates the structure of our skin. It's the protein within our skin that kind of props it up and makes it the shape it is. And as we get older, the collagen, like all of the fibers in our bodies, begins to kind of become less common. We make less of it, and also it tends to not be quite as tightly wound up and as strong as it used to be. So retinol is very important in helping our bodies to keep that structure of our collagen really nice and healthy. The second vitamin, which is really important to our skin, is vitamin C. As most people know, vitamin C supports our immune system. So if you'll recall the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, that's what they're talking about. It contains high levels of vitamin C, and the vitamin C supports that immune system. So we're less likely to get colds and other illnesses. So this is true about vitamin C, and the old adage about the apple a day is a good one. But also what vitamin C is an absolutely unprecedentedly good um, supplier of antioxidants. And the antioxidants, again, come in, mop up those free radicals and stop them from attacking our cells, because our cells are under enough attack as it is. So vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin, unlike vitamin A, D and E, which are all fat-soluble. Vitamins that are fat-soluble you can store in your body for a while until they're used up, whereas vitamins that are water-soluble will be washed through as we drink water. So actually it's very important to make sure that we get very good levels of vitamin C. So vitamin C is found in things like blueberries, or any berries, but specifically blueberries are very high in it. Citrus fruits are a good source, and lots of other kind of fruits and vegetables such as carrots, but actually in huge amounts in capsicums or bell peppers. They're very, very good supply of vitamin C. Then we have vitamin D. Now you'll recall when I was talking about going out in the sun that I was talking about making sure that we get enough sunlight to provide us with vitamin D we need, because we don't absorb it particularly well from foods. But having said that, in the winter it is quite important, because there is a lot less sun around, to try and boost the amount of vitamin D that we do have. And some very good sources of vitamin D are mushrooms, and also citrus fruits have a good level of it. Then we come to vitamin E. Now everybody knows that vitamin E is connected with the skin. They will have heard of creams with it in, and may have used them if they suffered as children, or even as adults with eczema. One of the creams that's very commonly given to people with eczema is vitamin E cream. But obviously vitamin E, eating it is very important too. It really does support our skin health, and very good sources of vitamin E are surprisingly potatoes, because we don't often think of potatoes of having particularly good levels of anything, but actually potatoes are a good source of vitamin E, as are olive oil and nuts. And what vitamin E does in your skin, again, is to help repair that collagen, which is so vital for the support of our skin. And finally, I'd like to talk about two of the minerals. I'd like to talk about chromium. The reason chromium is very important is because it helps to stabilise that blood sugar that I was talking about. And so obviously if we can stabilise our blood sugar as much as possible, we're less likely to get glycosylation. And good sources of chromium are broccoli, yeast. Sorry, I lied. It's the chromium that's a good that's got high levels in potatoes. But it's avocados, nuts and olive oil that vitamin E is in. So to clarify, chromium is in broccoli, yeast and potatoes. And finally, there's yeast. Try that again. Finally, there's zinc, which helps to regulate our sebum. Now, our sebum is the oil that's produced by our cells in hair follicles, and it comes up the hair and comes in a nice fine layer across the skin. And this, mixed with some water and the fatty acids and things that I was talking about, is what creates that acid mantle or that lipid barrier. So providing we've got the right amount of sebum being produced and it's the right thickness of sebum, then it will travel very nicely up that hair and spread out over our skin in a lovely healthy layer. Now, some people, unfortunately, will know that that doesn't always happen effectively because they may suffer from acne. And actually, acne comes in different levels, right down to I get occasional spots when I have hormonal imbalances, right through to very, very vigorous acne, which is very painful and pustular and which causes great angst and discomfort to the people that suffer from it. So actually, if we can balance that level of sebum and prevent the acne from happening, that's really useful. And one of the most important factors in helping balance our sebum, apart from all the water and things, is to make sure that we have good levels of zinc. And zinc is found in good quantities in Brazil nuts, in mushrooms, and in sunflower seeds. So, finally, in terms of nutrition, I would like to set you a micronutrient challenge. I'm doing this at the moment. I've not been very good at updating Facebook because I've been out and about and very busy all week going to various different shows and all kinds of bits and pieces. So this week I've not been particularly good at writing it down, but I have been doing my micronutrient challenge, and I'm going to be putting down a list of various things that I'm eating, and will update you if there's anything very wonderful. Make sure that you see recipes for anything that is really delicious. But what I'm doing is making sure that as well as my normal 5 a day, that there is something that's absolutely jam-packed full of some of the vitamins and minerals that I'm talking about in the parts in terms of vitamins A, C, D, E, and chromium and the zinc. So what I'm suggesting you do is not worry too much about what's in any individual food source, but to make sure that you eat a rainbow, because if you do, you're sure to get lots of those nice vitamins and minerals in your diet. And my challenge is on my Facebook page, which is Forever Young, and you should be able to find it on my Facebook. And if you come on there and like my posts and then fill in something about one of the micronutrient challenges you've done or several of the days, at the end of the month, when I've seen some posts and found there's one on there that I think deserves it, I have a goodie bag to send to people. So if you'd like to join, it doesn't matter if you haven't started already, because you only have to put 1 post or 3 posts or 5 posts. I'm only going to choose 1 to get the award, and I'll be giving that out in early November. So thank you for listening in, and I'm sorry I stumbled over so many of my words tonight, but actually vitamins and minerals, there's an awful lot to kind of pack in, much as your bodies do when they break down your foods and put them into your cells. So I'll try to hold it all in my head in one go without notes today was a bit difficult, and stumbling over my notes has been interesting. So I hope you'll forgive me for those stumbles, and I hope you'll listen in my normal slot tomorrow at 8 in the morning, and have a lovely afternoon, evening, rest of your morning, wherever you are in the world. This has been your Forever Young host, Kim.